Hey guys, welcome back to Talking Business. I'm your host, Kobi Simmat. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Trent Whiston. And I don't think we've seen each other for 18 months because of COVID.
No, January
2020.
Yep.
In New York.
Yep.
Really good show. So we're going to explore a really interesting conversation where Trent, in the last, 2 years, really has merged a number of BossBrain ideas into BossBrain, an organisation which is kind of a one-stop shop to help your organisation do the things you need to do. I'm not going to steal his thunder, he can get into that. But he's had some really interesting business opportunities, business success. He's done a really interesting exit from a business and he is getting his head around what he needs to do to get into the future. We're going to explore a whole bunch of questions. I've got some questions for him. He's got some for me. We're going to see where this one goes. But, mate, welcome. It's so good to have you here.
Thanks, Kobi.
Talking Business with Kobi Simmat. We're talking about business. Mate, it's really good to have you here. I haven't seen you for ages, and it's nice to have someone in the studio.
Yeah, thanks, Kobi. I when we were talking and you reached out about inviting me, and I was like, I'm coming to the studio. I was I've been locked down in Melbourne for so long, and we lost track of how many days it was. So I was like, the big thing for us, we were in New York in January 2020, and then myself and my wife, we were in Vegas in February. Come back on the 28th of February on a flight, and all of a sudden the world stops, and it's like you're on such this high from being over there, and then it's all of a sudden you're in this panic stage. You come back with all these strategies about what you're going to do, and that's what I was talking about the other day. Like, I was really impressed with what you have still been able to execute off the back of those, and we were just like, oh, wow, now we're going back into defense. We're supposed to be on attack. So that was really, as far as I talk to people about emotions going up and down, it was like you're on this high and it's like, whoa. And you're just down. So it's just amazing to get away. I had a plan to come up to Sydney just before the outbreak happened in Sydney. Didn't happen. And then I planned to come away with this, and then Omicron got announced. I was like, I don't know what to do.
Just go.
Yeah, I was just like, no, we're just going.
We're just going.
It's just great to...
It's good to be here.
Get out of my environment. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, like, BossBrain's a new thing, and I kind of want to explore that, and I want to talk about, the different businesses, because, like, we do go, I want to hear about this industry or that industry, and you've worked across a bunch of industries, which is really interesting. But before we get into that, can you talk to us a bit about, like, what is BossBrain today, and where's it come from? Yeah,
so BossBrain today is effectively a business service business. So bookkeeping, business coaching, we do websites. We did have a marketing arm. I've put that on pause post the COVID thing, and we're leaning into the bookkeeping and the coaching side of things in the interim. But ultimately, where BossBrain has come from is with our other business we had. My wife wanted to become a better business owner, and she initially went off and did a coaching course, and in that process she established that, hey, hang on, maybe I can help some other businesses with what I've learned and whatever. So on the back of that, and also her uncle dying of brain cancer, was the evolution of Boss Lady Brain, which was coaching for women in small business. And I was involved in my other business. I was pretty much told, don't get involved, stay out of it. And she was running with that.
She's a very strong woman, your wife.
She is. She's very strong.
We love her dearly.
But that's part of the reason why
April.
I can't be with someone because I'm a very high D energy. I just go over the top of people if they don't play ball with me. So I
love you, April.
So what happened was she started asking me, even though she told me to stay out of the business, she started asking me to come in and help her clients because they needed particular advice, more so around finances, which is my kind of best skill set. And from there, I started helping people, and then we started having men wanting to get those services, but they weren't comfortable with coming to Boss Lady Brain for obvious reasons. So we announced Boss Man Brain. And off the back of Boss Man Brain, I said, now we've got 2 different businesses, 2 different Facebook pages, 2 different marketing strategies. Let's just combine them. So we dropped the lady and the man, and that was the evolution of BossBrain. And that's where we are today.
It's non-gender specific.
Yep, anyone's invited. So it's a very new business. It's off the back of our other business, and it's very new. So that's where now my other business that I was in, I went into it in 2008, right in the middle of the GFC.
Chaos.
I was 25 years old, didn't really understand the GFC, but now looking back, realised that I've come into a business in the middle of a crisis, and I've effectively started another business in the middle of another crisis.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I think that's an amazing thing to do, because we were talking earlier about how sometimes business owners are successful straight away and they ride a wave and it's amazing, but then when they get hit with something, they don't know how to deal with it. Whereas in both instances of my last 2 businesses, I've been hit with problems right from the get-go. It hasn't been at all smooth. It hasn't been at all normal. It's been straight away, bang, 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 significant major issues. And I think that for me, for my evolution of being in business, as far as learning and dealing with those things, has been more of a benefit than, I probably would have been a lot harder. I think you were just saying where you'd got your business to a certain point and then it's like, I've just been knocked back these runs.
Exactly right.
And that can be really challenging. So, that's where BossBrain's at now. As far as where it's going, my vision for it, and this is off the back of being as a business leader for 12 years, not having a lot of support, having different people involved in my business, whether it's accountants, insurance, not knowing where to go. Trust is such a big thing for me in business, whether it be my staff, whether it be my customers, whether it be the people who I use to help me in my business. As soon as the trust goes, the relationship ends when it comes to me. And I always struggled with having multiple people involved in the business. You get different ideas. So I wanted to create a business that was a one-stop shop. It was like a Woolworths shopping centre for business. It's a really challenging concept. I've spoken to people and they're like, we don't know how you're going to execute it because there's so many legal things around it. Like if you want to have a business legal department, you can't just start it. You've got to have a legal lawyer degree. And then you've got stakeholders that are involved with that. Same with accountants and all insurance and finance brokering, all these things. Marketing, and that's a bit easier because you don't need those legal requirements. But to put all those other things together is a real interesting strategy, and why people haven't done it, because it's quite complicated. And trying to manage, okay, well, that person will come into my business, but they will want some equity in the business, and how does that work? And, so that's my goal. But I think the really important thing for me, and this is where people don't look long term, it's a 30-year plan for me. It's not like I don't think it's going to be in 5 years.
No, that's right.
And I might achieve it in less than 30, but I'm very realistic to say I might not achieve this for 30 years. So that's what I want to achieve. Basically create a real machine around business. And from there, hopefully that leads me into other things and being involved with other businesses, and, who knows from that point.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing in terms of, I think the fundamental problem that you're looking to solve is if you're a founder, if you're an owner, if you're a business leader, that it's lonely at the top.
100%.
And to have someone that you can go to that can give you a confident referral. It takes that kind of trial and error out of a service provider. The common complaint, you never hear from accountants. You never hear from accountants. And then sometimes you question whether the accountant's there for you or whether they're there to have the tax accurately collected. Not how to get around it and how to minimise tax, but, oh, no, that's the situation you're in. Here's the accurate tax, and whether it's the legal support, or those other
I'll just jump in there because that's just brought up a point that's really relevant for me, is that a lot of the time that particular person or organisation is coming only from their angle.
Yeah.
So the accountant's looking at it from their angle, and they're not looking at it from the marketing angle or, the legal angle or, all these other angles that come when it comes to business. And that's where I see the benefit of having all of the stuff, because you can effectively, it's like having a board for small business where it's like, okay, we've got these multiple people we can pull off so we can get the multiple opinions rather than having to go somewhere separately to get those opinions.
Yeah.
That's a really big thing for me, because always dealing with, and I don't like doing it, but bashing accountants in the sense that they've done an accounting degree, they're very structured in how they're doing it. I think they're very reactive. They look at it from a compliant point of view. They don't look at it from a business growth point of view. Yes, there's business advisors that are in accountants and they've kind of fell into that kind of industry, but they're not. They're just so reactive. They're not proactive. You've got to know what questions to ask to extract the information from them.
Exactly
so
right, yeah.
That's a huge thing for me, that, as far as being a problem that I really want to solve.
Yeah. So if you're say a founder, I mean, we've been talking a lot lately about, say, the Great Resignation. That's been a topic that has been coming up a lot. Is if you're somebody, maybe let's talk about a couple of different, case studies. The first case study, somebody who's, got a bit of experience, you've got a few runs on the board, you're planning a sea change, tree change, change in your life, and you're going to go out and maybe start freelancing.
Okay, yep.
What's your advice for someone who's thinking about freelancing as a starting point?
All right. So what I'd say straight away is, and this, different opinions, I don't see freelancing as a business. I see freelancing as a job. There's very few freelancers who go out and make hundreds of thousands of dollars. A lot of the time they're chasing that freedom, and in business you need people to scale a business. You don't really have a business just one person.
It's not an organisation if you're one person.
Correct.
Yeah.
So to me, all you're doing is getting a job. Now the difference is that you don't have a boss directly. Your boss is the customers. But a lot of owners don't realise this. The customer's always the boss. They're the one giving you the money. So often wherever the money's coming from is generally what's determined as your boss. So I see them as being an employee of customers. And what I see is that people go into this freelancing, think I'm going to be free. I'm going to be able to do my own thing. I'm going to be able to work my own hours. And that may be true. And I support it for the people that's all you want to do. And it's important that you understand that that's what it is there for, and that's its limitations. Unless you're planning on setting up a freelancing business where you start getting other freelancers, but there's numerous sites that do that already. So it's about setting expectations. It's about saying, okay, I'm going to go be a freelancer, and that's going to satisfy my life requirements, my money requirements, but that's it. For me, there's a very hard ceiling in the freelance industry. So I think it's a very viable option for people that want that freedom and just, happy doing that. But if you are any person that's got any kind of entrepreneurial, I wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah. And I think we were talking off camera, and I think we agree on this point that, and this is for people in Australia, not necessarily for everyone overseas, figure out what your version of this is, but no sole traders. Absolutely not. So sole trader is a structure for running businesses, or the perception that it's a business. If you're a sole trader, it's not a business. Yep. And so both of our advice is consistent with you that if you're in Australia, just go straight out and register a proprietary limited, or if you're in the US, register an LLC straight away from day one. Set yourself up for success. You might have an accountant say, oh, don't worry about it, just set yourself up as a sole trader or be a casual contractor. It's got so many issues down the track, and there's so many benefits that you miss out on that, I think we can just cut straight to the chase on that particular one. And agree on it.
And there's some industries you have to be, like doctors and like certain industries, you do have to be a sole trader because they want liability attributed to the person. So you don't have a choice. But if you've got a choice, it's if you don't have the money to set up a company, don't start a business.
It's
One thing I will say on that, sometimes the word company and being a director scares people.
Yeah, right.
Because people associate that being big corporates and stuff, being big governments or like big corporate, publicly listed companies. Like you can be a tiny company. Like you can be a sole director. You don't need to have a board. That scares a lot of people. So I think it's just about people probably doing a bit of more research to find out, well, what does it mean to be a director and what does a company actually look like? So yeah, I've had that a bit where people are scared off by just the idea that it's a company.
Yeah, right. Interesting. I'll throw in some statistics here. The Small Business Administration in the US reports that 1 in 240 companies, this isn't sole traders, 1 in 240 companies that starts gets past $10 million turnover. Doesn't matter about the currency. And 50% of businesses that start fail in the first year.
I know they're the stats, and I've heard you say this, you don't fail unless you walk away from it.
Correct.
Unless you quit.
Yep.
So I don't think people, if I look back on what I've done through my life, persistence and determination is probably one of the biggest attributes that's got me to where I'm at today. And that's when our previous business, which was a holiday park, my wife had said to me multiple times, let's just go. Like, I've had enough, let's just go. And I'm like, nah, we're finishing what we started. And just people have these expectations that they're going to get to a certain level in a certain amount of time. The fact is it doesn't happen. I mean, still to this day, Uber's not profitable. Yeah. I think Amazon took 20 years to be profitable. I think it's Facebook and Google, it was like 3 and 5 years. I generally say it's 3 years before you become profitable. And 3 years, like earning a profit when you don't pay yourself a wage is not a profit. It's just that's your wage, right? So until you're paying yourself a proper market rate wage and the people in the organisation the proper market rate wage, it's only the profit on top of that where you're actually making a profit.
Yep.
And it just doesn't happen. And I see people go into it and they're like, they don't have any capital. So what happens is they need money to live off because these people are going into business coming off the back of a job where they're like, I want to make more money and I think I can do it through business. They walk away from their job. And I think this is the hardest transition. And I don't think it's talked about enough. And this is why so many businesses fail in the first year, because the business owner can't keep going without making money. And I actually have told recently some business owners, go and get another job and hire someone else and promote your business more, but don't work in it because you're actually restraining your business and because you're working to pay your bills.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's, for me, those stats is too many people are trying to start new businesses instead of getting themselves into a position financial management for me, both professionally and personal, where how much money you need to take out of the business.
Yeah.
And then saying, okay, now I've got the money to really go hard in a business, and then you might be successful.
Yeah. We've got some guests in the studio here. Did you hear that, Bella? Yeah, perfect. All right. So,
one of the big parts of me, I pride myself on personal finance as well. Prior to my previous business, I was in the Air Force. Very stable income, career that can go, for as long as it wants to go. But I was young, wasn't educated, didn't have any mentors, found myself with $2.23 in the bank on a Tuesday and didn't get paid until the Thursday.
Wow.
And luckily, because I was in the Air Force, there was a mess. I could go and eat at the mess and it would come out of my pay, so I didn't need to go buy any food. Luckily, I had enough petrol in my car to get to it because I didn't live on base, and I got through until the Thursday. But I sat back and I said, I never want to come back to this situation. And I started research. I started tracking all of my money, started treating my money more like a business. I downloaded Microsoft Money, which was a free program back then, and I tracked every bit of money that I spent. And it was from really then that I started growing from that financial management to really look at, okay, there's no point in earning money if I'm just going to spend it. I might as well be on the dole. Yeah.
Everyone loves a rock and roll.
Yeah. So I mean, as far as that, like for you, like when you, or what would you say? How many years ago did you start your business? 17. So when you started your business 17 years ago, what was your position back then?
Well, I started. I don't tell this story very often, but I was burnt out. I was never trained to be an employee. So I grew up in a family business, design and construction business. My dad's an architect. We did developments, and so it was boom bust for us. Payday from a development, and then like nothing. Winter in the desert. For long periods of time, and so you kind of learn to live. And I've been self-funded since I was 15, and for failed business reasons, and that's another part of the story. But for me, when I started the business, I was burnt out. I couldn't play the political game. Working in a couple of big corporates, had an $8,000 tax return, and I said to my wife, "I got the $8,000 check." We had a mortgage. My wife was working full time, and I was like, "I'm going to go freelance." So it was the great 2004. It was the great resignation. I was like, I can't do this. There's a couple of people asking me to do some contracting work. I'll register a proprietary limited. I'll go do some contracting. I didn't kind of intend on starting a business. I just didn't know what I was doing. But what I did do was I kept my, we didn't kind of have an issue because my wife and I have been always pretty good with having cash in the bank for emergencies and rainy day, because she's a traveller. And she's like, save up the money, leave it in the bank, spend it on a holiday, right? And that's how she works. So there was always kind of cash in the bank, because she was like, no, you can't spend that because we need it for the holiday. So for us, it was kind of, living on the smell of an oily rag. But what I did do was I kind of went from, I don't know, a couple $100 a day to $1,000 a day. And so instead of increasing my lifestyle expenses, and the accountant at the time said something to me, he says, now you've registered your company, he said, don't go and buy a fancy car. And I think that a couple of mistakes that not everybody makes, but some people make, is they go, all of a sudden they may have a little bit of early success and not necessarily go buy a house because you need some records, but they'll go maybe rent a more expensive house, get a better car, go buy some clothes, and kind of, it's the flashy entrepreneur that's not really an entrepreneur that you see on Instagram, for example. What I did was I took my $8,000 tax return and I said, I've got 4 weeks to survive. And at 4 weeks, we'll run out of money and I need to go get a job. So I did some contracting. All of a sudden I had 10 weeks. Then I had 12 weeks in the bank. And then I had 16 weeks in the bank. And it got to a point where I had 6 months worth of, I could go for 6 months with no work, networking, selling, marketing, doing everything. And I could go for that long. I could go for 6 months, and we've got, it's runway essentially. And we talk about that now with startups. You talk about runway and burn rate. So if you're thinking about a startup and you're talking about doing a raise, you still got to do the work. And I think a lot of people's startups don't realize that. You still got to go actually build the thing. It's not just about the raise, it's about go find customers. And the best way to fund a startup, separate discussion point, is to get customers to fund it. Not an investor, right? Because when you get investors to fund it, you don't own it anymore. Get a customer to fund it, you own the whole thing. So I did it with $8,000 tax return, 6 months. In the second year, I actually ate into that 6 months. It came back down to a month. But what I did do in the time, because I didn't have any work, and it wasn't actually then, I think it was actually 2006, maybe 2007. Work did dry up because I'd been really busy. I didn't do any marketing and selling, and I tripped over myself. What I did do in that time was build products. And I built some training courses and some bits and pieces that we've then leveraged, and we're still leveraging today in that point in time. But that's how I got started.
Yeah, so I think that I talk about is it's kind of like the business owner trap. And I'd be interested to know, because I've got my story around this, but what it is where the business owner starts a business, they've got their thing that they do. And generally they'll start a business around that, and they will, we talk about this, the business owner being the jack of all trades, they do everything in the business. Now the issue with that is well, the business is paying them their wage that they need to live off. As again, what I talk about, they're not actually profitable yet, they're just paying themselves. So then there's the question of when do you hire that first person? And what I see is that it's like the business owner trap, where it's, how do I incur more expense by employing someone? Because you're not just, as soon as you employ that person, yes, you want that person to bring in more money, but it's not going to happen straight away. So there's this lag time where you've then got to fund it. So for you, because I know now you aren't like in the business like
At
you would
all.
have been when you were at the start. How did you transition out of that? Because to me, that's valuable for every business owner. One of the other podcast guests was talking about that was one of his big struggles. Like he's really struggling with that.
Yeah. Look, I think from my perspective, in hindsight,
Yep.
how did I do it? And I guess you could say, actually, this is successful. No one's ever asked me this question before, so I really like it. The very first person I hired them to do the work that I was really good at.
Okay.
The thing, right?
Yeah, right.
It was the thing. Because, and I don't know why I did this, but it's a successful strategy now that you asked me this question. Because that was the easiest thing for me to teach somebody.
Yep.
And so she came in and she worked for me for about 2 years, and I taught her how to do all the technical stuff that I could do, because that was the fastest thing. I couldn't fast teach someone to sell or do the accounting or do the bookkeeping or that, because I was still trying to figure that shit out.
Yep.
But the stuff I was really, really good at, I was able to teach someone really quickly. Not only that, I was able to dive in if there was an emergency. And I could do that with my eyes shut in the middle of the night. Right?
It's bringing a smile to my face, because I almost feel like we just cracked an egg in that space, and it's something that I've thought about. All the advice that you hear, it's outsource the stuff that you don't like doing.
Correct.
Right? That's what everyone says.
And it's bullshit.
That's what I do
Yeah.
bookkeeping. I'm very good at bookkeeping. I learned it from our business previous, which is a family business, because that's what the business needed. So I grabbed the MyOb instruction manual and I learnt it. And the business had a $30,000 loss per month. I was like, I need to work out the financial foundation to get this right. So I learnt it and I operated and I did all of my own bookkeeping. And now we offer bookkeeping through BossBrain, and it's my marquee product that I want to lean into. It's got good retainer. It's, if you've got a bookkeeper that you trust, you'll generally stay with them for many years. It's consistent business. And it leads into other things. My first hire is a bookkeeper.
Perfect.
And now that you've just said that, I've realised that's why, because we talk about this. You need, as a business owner, to be able to monitor what your staff are doing and be able to teach them so they can grow.
Correct.
And people get people to come into their business that they don't know how to do, because that's what the advice that they're given, but they don't really know whether they're being good at it, or they don't know how to teach them. They don't know how to step in if they get sick. And it creates a whole heap of other problems. So it's really, I think
it's funny you said, it's funny we're talking about this, because I literally had a conversation with our operations manager in one of our businesses yesterday, and she was like, we're short on resources. And I said, do not panic.
Yep.
I said, because literally I can clear my schedule, and worst case scenario is I can step in and do that job. And not only that, there's another director in one of our other businesses and another senior person who sits across all the businesses. The three of us
can all step in.
It is literally 60 billable days a month that we can dive in and we can fix a disaster.
Yep.
So I think it's a really interesting point that, look, there's obviously lots of discussion with people around passion and what are you passionate about and what do you want to do and all that kind of stuff. And people saying, do what makes you happy. No, do the thing that you're prepared to fight for. What is the thing in your business that you're prepared to die for? Yep. Like as a parent, you'll die for your kids, you'll fight for your kids. So I think there's a couple of misguided messages around obviously that with resourcing and what's the first person you hire. And you can supervise that and fix that and keep training that. And then the second thing is, what are you passionate about? It's the thing you're going to fight for, that you'll die. I'm prepared to take this one all the way to the death.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, and I know you guys talk about this in your business with your policies and your procedures and really laying that out. How do you lay out a policy and procedure for something you don't know how to do?
Good point.
So it's like, isn't it easier to hire, do the thing that you're really good at that back to front, write out how you do it, write out the procedure, then hand it over to someone else, then learn the next part. and do that policies and procedure. You know,
It's
just kind of, but it's
100%.
just it's counter
100%.
to what we people advise.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because I do agree that so you do that. The transition then, so you got that person coming in. What happens then? You got one person.
Yep.
Like, how quickly does it go after that?
Pretty quick.
Yep.
It depends how you want to push it, right? So they talk about like your most profitable days the day before you hire your first employee. I don't know if I agree with that, because certainly these days it's quite profitable, but certainly a lot more. I think that look, this is the thing that I'm really passionate about, which is strategy, which is choosing not the riches are in the niches, but or niches, as we say here in Australia.
Yeah.
But I think that we've got to have a conversation about choosing markets, and we've got to have a conversation about choosing businesses and business types, because people see me do this in our videos all the time. It's like, don't be a focus group of one. And I think I've probably stolen that from Gary. But it's something that's really meaningful to me around two things. One is, yes, there's some great ideas out there, but you might be solving a problem for yourself, and it's not a very big group of people that have that problem.
Yep.
What you think is not, what you think looks great and is not necessarily what the market thinks looks great, and is a problem. So, I mean, let's talk about the businesses you're looking to go into. That decision's predicated on a coming boom, right? Like, there's businesses we're choosing to look at and invest in, and there's things we're looking away from.
Yep.
And I think freelancers and that kind of stuff, it's much easier to be successful in business if you've got a tailwind.
Yep. Yeah, I think where people jump in, a lot of the time the easy thing is generally the thing that everyone's already jumped on. It's not a new thing. Like, let's say a Google ad specialist right now. You jump onto the freelance thing, there's thousands of them, around the world. It's not really a problem. Like, it's the thing is, there's an argument to say, if the problem's still there, there's an opportunity, and there is still businesses out there that have problems with their marketing strategy. So there's still an opportunity there. The issue is are those business owners willing to spend the money to solve that problem? And a lot of the time the answer is no. So even though the problem's there, there's got to be a willingness there as well to buy the solution. And I think that's a piece that people miss, is that they think, even if they have identified a big problem in the market and they're going to focus on that problem, are the people with the problem actually willing to solve the problem or do the work or pay the money? Or
have the money.
Yeah, or have the money in the first place. So that's a big thing when you're looking at, okay, well, what am I going to go into? I don't think people look at. I agree. One of my knacks that I feel like I have is generally being a pretty good predictor of markets and general kind of more macro things that are going on in the world and the direction that the things are heading. I'm not like awesome at, organization, like, emotional intelligence and all of that kind of stuff. That's not my strong suit.
Yeah.
That's where my wife comes into it. But as far as the bigger moves, as far as saying, okay, I'm going to go in this direction, I have generally a pretty good feel about, okay, this is what's going to happen. As far as working that out, I don't know how to teach that. Like, I don't know if you've got any advice around that. I think there's a little bit of life
experience. I think, I think that, and we got a couple of people here in the studio with us, and this is advice that I'll give you right now, Bella, is that despite the desire to go start a business and work for something, you are almost 1,000% more likely to be successful if you start your business when you're 30, because you have watched it being done and made mistakes while someone else is paying you.
Yep.
And so I think that there's a couple of things, which is to go and get some experience, but move around till you find a place where you're actually happy to work under somebody, under a good leader. It's no different to sports players. They will follow a coach or they'll follow a team because they know that person can make them successful. And we've only got a limited amount of experience to refer back to.
Yep.
So I think those aspects, I hope I'm answering the question in terms of considering how can we set ourselves up for success.
Yeah, I think the issue we have coming, like for younger generations coming out of school and uni and whatever, there's like this framework that's laid out in front of you to say, oh, what are you going to do for work? Are you going to be a lawyer or a teacher or whatever? Like, it's very rigid. It's like there's no innovation most of the time, I mean, I come out of school, I went to the Air Force as an avionics technician. I then jumped into a caravan park. Now I'm doing bookkeeping for and coaching for other businesses, like very different things. So I do think people kind of get locked into a certain direction and they don't look. Probably one of my biggest learnings and assets is I'm a very good observer. I don't read books like you do. Like I'll read, but I don't feel like I learn heaps from reading. I've always learnt from observing, and I've observed behaviours of like my dad and my mum and my brother when I was in younger years of what works and what doesn't work. What do I stay away? Then friends as I got older. Okay, that friend's going and I don't like that. I'm not going to do what they're doing. Oh, that friend's doing something. I like what they're doing. So I'm going to kind of replicate those things. And when I go down the street, I look. I'm always looking. Like I look at things, and I'm always going, oh yeah, okay, that's that. And like, I'm probably a bit on the spectrum in the sense I look at a lot of things, like a lot more. I'm very aware of everything that's going on. And that lets me work out, okay, what are people kind of going towards? We met at GVX with Gary. He talks about reading comments, and that's how he does it. So I think if you are you want to go into business and you want to have that, I think it's important to establish how do you understand what the market's doing, like learn how you do it, because different people do it in different ways.
Yeah. 100%. Look, I think obviously market research is really important, and is there, the first thing is what's the problem we're solving? The second thing is, does the person who has the problem have the money to pay for it?
Yep.
Are there any other people doing it? I think to a certain extent, it is good in the first instance to be in an established market because it's less money to educate.
Yep.
And I've got some views around pricing, and that's maybe a separate discussion. But back to your question about can you teach the observation in terms of, I think observation's one. I think understanding what basic human needs are is two. What drives people to action and movement is another part to it. But if you can kind of learn that stuff, but I can, for the benefit of the viewers and listeners, I can say two things that you should do or should consider doing. One is to read the investment advice of people like Morgan Stanley. They release these reports and they say this is where you should be putting your money if you're investing in shares or property or different asset classes. They, as we record this right now, are saying don't put any more money into stock exchanges. Now, for me, that's that's interesting. That means they're going to crash.
Yeah.
Right? They've got nothing left in them in terms of upside, and they're actually saying vacuum your money out now while it's topping. And this is public knowledge, but a lot of people are saying, I can't believe the 2008 stock exchange crash. It was forecasted, but people weren't reading the forecast or looking for it. So go find the solid, forecasters, if you like. So to me, there's this seesaw trend. So when stock exchanges go down, property goes up. We already think property did a rally. You haven't seen anything yet, right? So real estate for the next 5 years, from 2022 through to 2027, real estate. Then back into the stock market.
Yep.
So, in terms of actually investing and considering those kind of things, the second thing is, and I can't remember the name of the book, because I have gluttony as far as books are concerned. But there's there's a book. There's a guy that releases a book every year, which is like, it's a trends forecast book, and he's got a series of books. We'll put the link in the comments below the video. We'll figure out what it's called. But there's a guy that he is doing every year or every second year. It's like business trends for the next couple of years.
Right.
And so, for example, he's recommending you consider any businesses to do with CBD, so marijuana-based businesses. He's talking, because there's a trend there. It's being globally legalized. Maybe. Show me the cover. No. Looking at metaverse businesses.
The fact that Facebook's just changed the name to Meta, that's...
You've got to go where, if it's about And there's two distinctions here, right? There's it's okay to want to make a lot of money. And I think that's not talked about enough.
Yep.
But if you want to make a lot of money, then fuck doing what you really like. Do something where somebody else has been successful. I've got two really good friends. They run one of the largest garbage truck companies in the country. And they pick up garbage, and sometimes there's dead bodies in it.
Yep.
And it stinks, and all of their trucks stink.
I think on that, I had a comment. I've got a client who does septic waste, and their comment was, people always need a shit. Like, that's never going to change, you know? Like,
it's not going to change.
It's not going to change. So and that's why I'm looking at my business and saying, well, people always, like, every business in existence needs to do bookkeeping.
Correct.
Not every business needs business coaching. So that's kind of like a fringe, kind of almost like a cherry on the top thing. But every business needs bookkeeping. Every business needs insurance. Every business needs marketing, you know, so that's why I'm looking at those types of things, because it's not actually industry specific. Now, I'm involved in the caravan park industry. That was my previous business. So it makes sense for me to target that market because I understand the systems, I understand all the things, rather than targeting, say, like the construction industry. If I go to someone in the construction industry and say, hey, I want to do your bookkeeping, and they'll be like, oh, what do you know about this? I'm like, not much.
Figure it out.
It doesn't give them confidence. I think establishing what is in the industries, but also what do people need and are going to continue to need, as opposed to just want.
Yeah, let's talk about some other examples, because we always end up talking about business. People need clothes, shoes, socks, toothpaste, toothbrushes. Did you know there's only 4 toothbrush manufacturers globally?
Yeah, right.
So start making toothbrushes. Right, there's your tip, right? Food, right? Ideally fruit and vegetables. So there's always going to be a need for farming.
Yep.
There's always going to be a need for like farming protein. Manufactured foods are going to come and go. And then there's ancillary things. Some people, like we said, some people have business coaching, for example, but a lot of people, some people buy vitamins. Some people don't buy vitamins.
That's right.
Some people have haircuts. Some people like me do them themselves, you know? So it's, you know, there's
more people after lockdowns do their own haircuts.
Exactly right. Some people make their own coffee. Some people buy their coffee. Some people make their own food. Some people buy their food. But there are some fundamental things that, like, everyone said there was a toilet paper shortage, right? There was no toilet paper shortage. We didn't use more toilet paper. No. We just used it at home instead of at work.
Yeah, that's
like
a good point.
Half the guys that work for us wait till they come to work.
Plus people were stockpiling it.
100%. There's that too. But then there was there was no more consumed, right? There was no more food consumed. It's just that we stopped eating food in restaurants.
Yep.
We started eating at home.
There was a shift.
100%.
Same with money. People have where we live, the market, the property prices have gone crazy. And it's like you look at it and you go, where's this money coming from? The comment that I've made is during this lockdown where the market's crashed and people are like, the money's still there. The money hasn't disappeared.
Yeah.
It's just shifted.
Moved.
That's all that's happened. It's not it's still in the system. It's just, is it still in people's bank accounts, or has it gone to, like, we know there's businesses that have really struggled, but then there's businesses that have boomed. So all that's happened is the money's shifted from there to there.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what you're talking about. There's still a need for those things, but instead of people spending at the restaurants, they're spending it more at the supermarkets.
Yeah, 100%. So if you're thinking about business ideas, kind of to wrap this point, it's about looking at those observations, the observations of movement.
Yep.
What do you think about, we kind of started talking, and I'm going to jump the gun on this question. We're kind of talking cold calling, door knocking, human interaction, face-to-face post-COVID. Let's hit that question.
All right. I want to jump one back.
Go ahead.
Because you wanted me to ask you about this. We went to GVX with Gary Vee. Gary Vee spoke and said, hey, we should be doing these strategies. And I come back from New York going, all right, we hired a content creator. We're going to lean into doing massive content creation. We're going to, podcast. We're going to, video, YouTube. We're going to be doing work, like all of these things. And COVID hit. And for me personally, it stopped us in our tracks, because what it did was it made me go back to on defense.
You got to save the farm.
Yep, protect the other side of the business. Now, from a third party watching you, I feel like you still executed on that.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you go about that? Because the amount of podcasts and stuff that you've done since that, you've really executed well on that, on the social media side of it. Mm-hmm. How did you manage to do that while everything else is still going on in the world?
Shit.
Yeah.
In 2020, we did 36,000 social media posts.
Yeah.
We were posting
Phenomenal.
100 times a day because I was like, we had already seen some early results, right? Because to go kind of New York, prior that was London, and I wanted to prove a point. So I wanted to, and I forget exactly what the graph was, but we had like a 1,000% increase in our marketing activities because I wanted to go to London from executing in Sydney.
Yep.
So we had the Sydney session. You guys missed London.
Yep.
And I wanted to go to London with a piece of paper that said, look what we did.
Mm.
We saw a direct relationship between our social media activity and our profitability. Like the graphs mirrored each other. And I went, well, if it did it already, I'm going to keep doing it. And I was like, if we 10x our marketing, can we 10x our business? Now, the reality was that we went into the headwind working even harder. It's what saved us.
Yep.
So
offense as opposed to defense.
we went into offense and we went bonkers. Now, how did I achieve that? Everyone says, oh, I don't have the resources and I don't have the time. Yes, you do. You pay for them. Mm. And so I have a team of 12 and we just maintained that team of 12 and we just kept hitting it really hard. And I think that I'm not prepared to hear, like people go, oh yeah, but you've got a team and you've got this and I'm really, no, I've had to learn it. I've had to build a team. I've had to pay for the team. I've had to invest in people and they come and go and they quit and they start and all that kind of stuff. And people are like, oh, but you've got a team and you've got all of this. It's like, well, I've built that from scratch.
Yep.
You can't buy it. You can't. We're doing stuff which, he said to us in the program, he said, they're doing stuff that you can't Google. Mm. We're now doing stuff you can't Google.
And I think we just started our podcast, 2 weeks ago. And it's funny because I messaged you, I said, we've just started talking business with BossBrain and you released it. And I said, great minds think alike. Yeah. But my wife didn't want to put the first one out because she couldn't make it because something happened with our kids and it was me by myself. And there's a few things that happened, like a few things went wrong. My phone went off in it. Something else happened. And I was like, no, we're putting it out.
Absolutely.
So because I'm not just executing it for 10 podcasts. It's a long-term strategy.
100%.
So when you started, it wasn't anywhere near what it is now.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So I think that's...
we're in our second version of our studio. Like we built a big studio in our previous office and we packed up that office due to COVID and was like, oh, fuck, we've got to build another studio.
Yep.
And it's been work. Like it's soundproofed in the ceiling and it's all that kind of stuff. But my advice to anyone we can debate where social media fits in marketing and all that kind of stuff. That's a kind of a separate question. But what I will say is when you start, no one's watching.
Yeah, exactly.
And often the people that are watching are your harshest critics, right?
That's right.
They're your friends and family. And so, we started YouTube and we started doing YouTube videos and the YouTube video that we started with is still on my YouTube channel. Go to Best Practice TV on YouTube, search by oldest. So you can search by most popular. You can flip the filter, right? There's 3 filters on YouTube on a YouTube channel. There is most popular, oldest, and newest. Flip our YouTube channel, click videos, flip it, and go to the very first video. It'll pop up at the top of the search, and it's edit. Because every single thing I was saying had and the video editor I had at the time, he edited out all the arms. And so it was like an epileptic fit video, right? But no one's watching, right? It's only got views because I tell people to go watch it.
Friends and family and
But people are like, oh, this is crap. We can't put that out. You got to take it down. My biggest regret in business is letting an employee who was working for us at the time not let me do Google AdWords when it was really cheap because she didn't like our website. And we didn't update our website for 18 months because we had this do it, don't like it, do it, don't like it. It needed to be perfect. And I thought that was the way to go because I hired somebody in that space that I wasn't very good in to do that.
Instead of learning
and it's my biggest regret. Now, that's not their fault. That's my fault.
Yep.
because I knew what we needed to do, and I was like regretting it every single day. And I should have said, no, fucking turn it on. The day we turned it on, I like literally no budget. It was Google AdWords, and I let Google have my credit card, and they spent $25,000 in a week. But we got leads.
Yep.
And I was like, right, now we've got something to work with. We can, because they were like, all they were like working out was what they liked or didn't like. And that's nothing wrong with that, because they did a great job and they had a good eye for detail. But we weren't getting any market feedback. And that's what I need, market feedback.
Yep.
And so that's what has been built, I guess, now as a result in terms of, yes, we executed a lot. We were in the top 10 posters on LinkedIn last year in terms of quantity of content going up. I was the first person in Australia to get LinkedIn Live by request. They gave it to influencers, and I was like, I want it. They're like, fuck, take it, go away.
Yep. And so I'm going to lead into what you asked me, because I'm a big person about answering questions. I was actually going to name a podcast Answer the Question, because it really frustrates me when people don't answer the question.
But you should do that.
But before we do that, one thing that's stopped me from doing some things is like, how do you deal with coming up with the content for a long period of time? And I have a fear of repeating my content. Do you have that? Like, do you repeat content?
Absolutely.
Yep. So how do you manage that? Because I think there's a lot of people who don't do stuff because they're like, oh, I said that last month. I don't want to say it again because I've already said it to people.
Yeah. Look, here's the thing, right? So you've got people searching, and they don't search the thing every month to get the same result every month, which will be your content every month.
Yep.
Everybody's evolving all of the time. Everybody's learning all of the time. Everybody's building on their foundations, like building a brick wall. It's layer upon layer upon layer.
Yep.
And so it's important. I don't like doing it. Like, I'm just like everybody else. I don't like going back and repeating my content. But when I repeat a 101 video on a quality management system and how to write policies and procedures, our viewers froth over it.
Yep.
But it's not the same group. It's a completely different group, because I do it, say, every 3 or 6 months. They do. Like, we send it out. It's like our most oversubscribed webinars that we run is when we promote this topic, because they've come down from my old YouTube videos. They've ended up on the email list, and we email it out. We say, hey, we're going to do this thing. They're like, oh, I'm in. Because they've ended up in our funnel. They're like, he's talking about stuff. No, that's too advanced. I want to talk about the basic stuff.
Yeah.
So everybody's kind of on this journey.
At a certain stage.
So the importance is that the biggest trap you can fall into, and I fall into it all of the time, I still keep smashing my face into this trap, is that I've moved on and grown as a person, and I want to talk about this other topic, but I'm known for these other the old stuff. And so it's like the band that's got to keep playing their greatest hits.
Yep.
You go to the concert, you want to hear the stuff you know. You don't want to hear their new shit. Fuck the new shit off. Play the stuff I love. I want to sing along.
Yep.
And that's what happens is your viewers are like, that I'm paying you to show up and play me your greatest hits. I don't want to go and see your like latest live Powderfinger.
Yeah. And I think also I suffered from the last lockdown in Melbourne. I suffered mentally. I was like, I even said to them, I said, we're going into lockdown again. But when it happened, it just really beat me down. I was like, I
think we're all beaten down.
I realized I'm actually more extroverted than what I thought I was an introvert. I'm actually more extroverted. And I went back to listen to some people that I used to listen to, and they're saying exactly the same thing. But what it did is it got me out of the rut.
Yeah.
It was like building on something that I'd already listened to. It was like reinforcement. So I think, listening to you say that, it's like people do need to rehear it, because if you just hear it once.
Yeah. You've read the book Traction by Gino Wickman. He says you've got to say it to your people 7 times.
Yep.
So maybe once you've repeated your content 7 times, you can move on.
Yeah.
But your listeners and your viewers and the people that you're kind of doing content for, and your team members, got to hear it 7 times.
I think the only counter thing to that is like anything you talk about that's relevant around timing, you probably don't want to repeat that, because it's like, well, it's not relevant anymore. Don't just do it for the sake of it.
Yeah.
So you asked me the question about cold calling, door knocking, that kind of thing. So I raised this with you before, as far as social media now for me is quite mature. Digital marketing is quite mature. It's been around for a number of years now. And there's a lot of people that are doing it. There's a lot of competition. we've come out of lockdown, some more than others. Some people haven't really been locked down, but a lot of the world has been locked down. And I'm in the studio with you today. I've flown up from Melbourne, not just for this. I'm using it for an escape for myself. But I said, I want to do this with you. I don't want to do it over a Zoom of so many Zooms.
We're here.
Where do you see that as far as from a marketing strategy and how it should influence people moving forward now coming, I know you say we're in the middle of COVID, but moving through COVID and moving into the future? Because I have a theory on it as far as people having personal contact and relationship building. How do you feel about that as far as what businesses should be doing on top of their, I'm not saying stop their social media strategy, but how do you, like, what would your thoughts be around that topic?
Oh, look, it's really simple. Sex is much better with another person, right? Right? It's not rocket science, right?
April, I don't know the answer to that.
We love you, April. Look, I think that, I think that we're tactile creatures and fundamentally we're tactile creatures. I think that what social media gives us is top of the funnel scale. But people, in fact, what it actually does is it creates more of a desire for people to get in your proximity.
Yep.
And so I think that don't see social media as an alternative to human contact. See it as a way to stay in contact in the absence of the human contact. And then the only other thing I'll say is that, I live and breathe the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman.
Okay.
So you've got touch. Right? It's one of the 5 love languages. So you've got touch, you've got words of affirmation, you've got acts of service, you've got gifts, and you've got quality time. It's really hard to have quality time. We've tried it. We've tried the family FaceTime, Zoom, kids, birthday parties and stuff with, my family's really close. Some of them are interstate. And we've tried the kind of, everyone's kind of looking at the screen and granddad's sitting there with the iPad on his lap in his rocking chair. So we're looking up his really hairy nostrils. To have the grandkids, I've never seen pop from that angle, But so I think you've got to have quality time and that's got to be, that's together. You've got touch. So already you've got 2 of the 5, which are proximity. Then you've got words of affirmation. They kind of land better when the vocal tone and the energy reverberation is not through a microphone and the internet and to somebody.
It's not processed.
Correct. Exactly right. And then you've got acts of service and you've got gifts. Like it's, we've been sending gifts to our team members. Like we sent hampers out yesterday for Christmas to everybody. And it was really well received by about 20% of the business because those people are probably, their primary love language is probably gifts. And they feel valued because they got a gift. There's other people that feel valued because of quality time, or people that feel valued because of touch. So I think that if you just took human nature in terms of doing business, absolutely businesses, everybody says, we couldn't win that business because the other guys had a better relationship.
Yep.
It's absolutely like, I think you've got to adjust to the circumstances, but don't see it as, I interviewed earlier today Bernadette Schwerdt, who wrote the book, The Secrets of Online Entrepreneurs. Fantastic book if you haven't read it, book recommendation. And yes, there's a lot of really successful online businesses, but they're still built on relationships.
Yes. Yep. And so my thoughts on that is that the social media, you need to keep doing social media. But what I feel is that it's created a lazy business environment where business owners now think that the strategy is create a Facebook page, a website, create a product, and then just spend an arse ton of money on Facebook ads, Google ads, whatever, and I've got a business and it's going to be successful. The problem, what people don't realize, is there's thousands of other people out there doing that. Business is not about being lazy. Business,
it's a full contact sport.
That's right. And people don't like to do the hard stuff. The hard stuff is walking down the main street and knocking on people's doors and saying, hey, how you going? You come out of COVID all right, and, this is what I'm doing. That's hard because it's when you compare it directly to an ad that you run, it doesn't seem like you're using your time in the best way. But if you can take advantage of I think you still need a target instead of just randomly doing it. Like, it's no different to targeting social media. Don't just randomly walk down a street and knock on people's doors that probably aren't going to buy it. I think it should be a bit targeted, depending on what your business is. But because it is harder, I personally see that there's a huge opportunity for that. So me personally, as a business owner, and what I talk about with the business owner trap, I'm making sure that I'm not doing my physical work. So I'm handing over as much work as I can so that I can hit the streets to promote my business. I can get out there and do those things, touch, see, look, form relationships. Now, they probably won't happen straight away, but it's more long term. And they might call me back in 3 months. Hey, remember you walked in, and it will mean more because everyone else is sending them emails or seeing Facebook posts. When they then see my Facebook ad, they're going, oh, there's Trent, or there's BossBrain. That's who came and seen us. It's that extra touch point that majority of business owners don't want to do again.
Yeah. I'll tell you, here's a cool story that I told you I'd tell you. So I spent the weekend at a wooden boat festival a couple of weeks ago, which was a lot of fun, and you can check out the MY Silver Cloud 2 Instagram. But I spent this weekend with these guys, and there was a kind of a group of us with these big wooden boats that we all restore and look after and stuff. And the guys across the marina from me, I had dinner with them one night, and they're telling me this story about how this boat had been so important in building the Visi empire.
Okay.
With the Pratts. And I do follow Anthony Pratt, and back to your comment about how long does it take to make a business. Anthony Pratt's pretty consistent on his social media about it takes 7 years to make a factory profitable.
Okay.
And I agree with that because it's taken that long to make this thing profitable. But they talked about that this boat was going out in its heyday 3 times a week with groups of people from the business, like suppliers and customers and entertaining people. And they signed heaps of deals on this boat. And the boat, the accountant was constantly challenging this constant cost of 2 full-time staff, all this alcohol, all the maintenance costs, because high maintenance boat. But the owners were like, this boat can stay for as long as it wants, for hundreds of years, because we signed $100 million deal on the dashboard and it had $30 million profit in it. Yep. And the boat would never consume that profit in a million years.
And no social media ad's going to do that.
Correct. Exactly right. Yep. So it's got, we talk about, I think what I want business owners of all sizes and anyone thinking about starting a business is to learn and start to learn about and trial and error your funnel.
Yep.
And social media it has got people's attention, but probably a little bit less so.
Yep.
And I think the reality is your marketing strategy needs to chase, you've got to identify the people you seek to serve. Who are the people that we really want to work with? Who are the people that our product or service is absolutely for, that we can guarantee success? Where are they hanging out? What's got their attention? And go where their attention is. And I mean, like, I put it down, but like, we still produce 2,000 copies of a magazine.
Okay.
Like, even though we do, this is expensive.
Yep.
Like, it's about $100,000 exercise.
Yeah, right.
And we send them out in the mail, and the bloody things cost about $6 just to send. Not only the fact that they cost about $10 to print, and probably another 80 grand to actually write the content, but then they bloody come back because we got the address wrong. And the girl's now going through and like fixing up the wrong addresses. So I think that what people can't see, because you can't see that part of our funnel unless you're right at the bottom of it. And then you're a contact point of our client. So you can see the marketing stuff, but once you actually start paying for our services, you see a shitload more right down the bottom of the funnel, including the face-to-face visit.
Yeah, it's funny, like there's a guy who talks about it, omnipresence.
Yeah.
You can see today I'm wearing BossBrain shirt. I'm not wearing this shirt just because I'm coming to see you.
Yeah.
I wear this on the weekends. Like I wear it all the time because people, it reinforces that interaction when they see you on social and then all of a sudden they see you down the street and then they might see a car and then they might see a magazine and then they might it's the whole picture of the marketing. It's not just one thing. And I think that's where it becomes down to that laziness, is where people just think they can just do one thing and success is going to come. I think, yes, you spend more time and more resources on the thing that gets the best results.
Yeah.
But don't just ignore all the other things, because all these little touch points add into it. Yeah, so that's... There was one other thing I wanted to talk about with you specifically, and that was around being successful in business, around persistence, determination, underlying qualities that you see. You've spoken to a lot of business owners as far as the underlying qualities that you see people being able to do compared to successful entrepreneurs, because I think too many people are trying to start their own business. I think there's already a lot of businesses, and I think people need to treat themselves like a business more. And there's no reason why you can't be really successful as an employee. But I feel like people sell themselves saying, oh no, I'm just an employee, so I'm not growing any wealth. I've got a good friend who is, I won't name the franchise, but he's a franchise prop. And in that model, he doesn't actually own the business. He's like a glorified manager, so to speak. They get a percentage of profits and all of that, but they don't actually own the business. So he's not building anything. He's just getting paid a wage, but he operates like a business owner. And my advice to him was, well, you need to build something else somewhere else, because you can't build it in there. As far as identifying that, because that's where business ownership is not, it's actually not for the majority of people, but people feel like they need to do it if they really want to get ahead in life. What would you suggest as far as how do people identify whether they should be going and doing their own business, or whether they're better off just working under other people?
Yeah, look, I think that it's a tough question. I think that if you absolutely can't understand why a business won't implement improvements, then you should go start a business. But if I want to make more money, or if I want freedom, or if I hate working for people, or the business owner decision comes from, if I just get out of my way so I can do this myself, because I can care for that person I seek to serve so much better. That's the decision to start a business. That's the decision to kind of go it and promote and build a worthy cause. Not, I just want to earn more money, or I want to take more holidays. It's well documented in 1,000 business books. There are business books for people because I need more time off. Don't quit your job and start a business because you want more freedom. Don't quit yourself and start a business because you want more money. Because the myths are, if you're working 40 hours for somebody, you will work 80 hours. If you are having 4 weeks of annual leave or 2 weeks of annual leave, you will get no annual leave for the first 5 years. And you will drive a shit car, and you will have to sell the really good car to put cash back into the business to pay your salaries and wages and the commitments. And the tax office is going to take their money from you whether you're profitable or not. So the business decision to start a business has to be, get out of my way because this person is in pain and I can really help them because I've got the solution to their problem. And no one can do it any better than me.
Have you done a DISC profile?
Have I?
Yeah.
A number of times.
Okay.
I can't remember.
You can't remember?
No.
Oh, okay. So from what I've seen, majority of successful business are relatively high D or C energies, as opposed to I or S. For me, that's a very simple method that I'm not saying that you can't be successful, but I think the odds stack against you a little bit when you look at, okay, am I that type of person? You can do these online and whatever, where you go do a DISC profile, because it takes a certain, personality to be able to lead people, to be able to take the tough knocks, to be able to deal with firing people, dealing with all of these things consistently that doesn't wear you down to an emotional point where you're not enjoying it anymore. Someone who's like an S energy trying to fire someone, it'll destroy them for like 2 weeks. They'll be out of action. that's just my 2 cents on that. I wanted to have a bit of an insight on that because for me, there's just too many people trying to start businesses.
It's easier to start a business and get married.
Yeah, it is. I mean, register an ABN, start a Facebook page. There's a business.
Off we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mate, we're going to keep talking.
Yep.
But what I'm going to do is do a wrap up because I want people to be able to contact you.
Yep.
So we're going to do more videos. You're going to go looking at our social pages. You're going to see more of this conversation. We're going to keep rolling. But for those of you that have been listening, this has been a fantastic conversation. It's always great to catch up with you. Where can people find you?
Yep. So obviously on the net, bossbrain.com. Very simple website as far as, easy to remember. Not .au, it's just bossbrain.com. If you go to AU, I think it still takes you there. Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm there on my own profile. We've also got our BossBrain profiles. That's the easiest place to contact me. Trent at BossBrain if you want it, at bossbrain.com if you want to email me.
Perfect. So go and check out what they're doing. That business is going to continue to expand. I'm excited to see what it does. I'm going to get April in here for a conversation too because she'll be chomping at the bit.
Oh, it's a different perspective.
Huge FOMO around not being here today and you beat her in. So we'll get more conversations taking place. So it's been a fantastic episode, really great conversation. If you don't see me on Instagram or LinkedIn, you'll definitely see me right here next time, Best Practice TV, or Talking Business on your favourite podcast platform. Bye for now. Thanks, mate. That's been awesome.